This is Alex, and welcome to Barely Braided, where we're taking a deep, deep dive into foster care, adoption, and all things parenting, even the sticky stuff.
Welcome to episode 23 of Barely Braided Podcast. I don't sound like Alex, do I? It's Joel, and we're doing something a little bit different today. I've got a guest that you'll meet in just a moment, but we're going to have what we call a Dad-isode. So it's just a couple of dads, and we're going to see what we can do. We've already screwed this up a couple of times, so bear with us, and here we go. So our guest today is our buddy Dale, and many of you that have been listening have heard us talk about Dale's family over the past 20-some episodes, especially when I'm on here. So I want to give a big old welcome to Dale. And Dale, say hello and tell us about yourself.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for having me on here.
First of all, what the heck are you doing here?
I got absolutely fed up with being trapped in my house from COVID, and I work from home anyway, so all I needed to do was bring my computer down here and work from your house. So I flew down here on Friday, and I fly out this coming Friday, so I'll be here a full week.
Sweet.
And get a different change of scenery for just a short time before heading back home.
Yeah, we've already had a little bit of fun. Friday night, we had John and Wendy, my in-laws, Alex's brother and his wife, in at the same time as Dale, and it was pouring down rain, and we decided that it would be a really fun idea to get a babysitter and go down to Broadway and hit up a honky-tonk, and we did, and we had a whole lot of fun. And they closed at 11, which was really weird. No, normally they don't close till, I think, 3, but with COVID, they close at 11. I don't get down to Broadway very often, thankfully. That'd be bad news for me, because that place is, it's rough. But,
a little bit goes a long way.
Yeah. We had a blast, had a few cocktails, and got to do some people watching and listen to some good music. But speaking of cocktails, I did want to throw this in there, that this episode is brought to you by Heaven Hill Quality House Bourbon.
It's delicious.
Taste the quality. Y'all know that's my staple, but we're doing the Dad-isode, dad potting, if you will. So we're enjoying a bourbon and being men here. So Dale, tell us a little bit about you, about your background, and a little bit about your family.
Certainly. So I am the husband to this beautiful gal named Suzanne, who we've been married since 2002, and I couldn't be more in love with that gal, and we are the parents of 2 children, Ian and McKenna. We'll get into a little bit more about that later on down the road, and we have a fuzzy little white Shih Tzu named Ollie.
So tell us a little bit about McKenna.
So McKenna is almost 15. I know that my bride, Suzanne, doesn't like me to age her like that, but she is almost 15, and she is a wonderful child. I know that she's going to listen to this, but I'm still going to tell the truth. She gets wonderful grades. She is passionate about the sports that she's involved in, which is basketball, and she kills it on stage with her show choir group, and she is just an easygoing, mellow kid.
She's a fantastic human being.
I agree. And I'm quite biased, but she would do just about anything for anyone at the ripe old age of 14.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's a good one, and y'all did a great job in raising her, because I look at Brooks and Ari, and I'm like, how am I ever going to mold 2 human beings to be as kind, as respectful, and as nice, yada, 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 as that young lady is. So you and Suzanne set the bar pretty high for us to make it. So
we were talking about it the other night, and I, as much as I would love to take a bunch of credit for it, her personality and who she is as a human being has a lot to do with that as well. But as they say, Rome was not built in a day, so don't expect Brooks and Ari to be...
I'm just trying to get through a day right now, buddy.
Cheers.
You're right. So you mentioned that you were the father of 2, and you had a son, Ian. Tell us about Ian.
So Ian was born in November of 2004, and I happened to be out in California for work at the time, out in Sacramento, and I get a call bright and early in the morning when we were supposed to go tour Alcatraz. And what movie did we watch last night?
The Rock.
Yeah. Probably one of my favorite Sean Connery movies. But anyway, I get a call at like 4 o'clock in the morning from Suzanne that she is going into labor and things are not okay. So I, get her calmed down and talk through what the next steps were going to be in hopes of delaying labor as much as we possibly can because she was 25 weeks at the time. And I then get off the phone with her and start working with my travel agent to try and get a flight home as soon as possible.
You're aging yourself here, buddy. You used a travel agent.
Well, it was a corporate travel agent.
Okay.
We had to use a corporate travel agent.
Fine, I'll give you a pass here.
So I get a hold of this gal, and I will probably not ever for the life of me forget the words that she told me. And she's talking me down at the time, telling me that it's going to be okay and everything's going to be just fine. And she'll get me home as fast as possible, which she did. I was home almost in between like 6 and 7 hours after getting the call from Sacramento to Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's a 4-hour plus flight.
Right. And I connected in Denver.
Wow. She did a good job.
So I got home. I was not there for when Ian was born. He was born while I was in the air, and he was 15 weeks early and weighed 1 pound, 12 ounces.
Wow.
And
so do they know what led to the early birth?
Yeah, and it's a pretty awful term, and it's called, my wife has an incompetent cervix, and I think it's...
Is that the scientific name?
It really is. And it means that the cervix opened up before it should, and the cervix is a muscle.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it started to open up early and caused Ian to be born premature.
Wow, that's interesting. So tell us a little bit more about Ian and his story.
So he was with us for a day and a half, and during that time, we were able to spend as much time as possible with him because he didn't get off to a great start. So with that being said, we didn't think for a second we were going to lose him, but we tried to get some rest ourselves. I had just flown from Pacific time into Central time, and Suzanne was up most of the night with labor cramps and all that goes along with that. So we tried to get a little bit of rest, and the doctor came in the morning and said that things were not looking good. And so we went up there, and they ran a few tests, and things kind of leveled out a little bit. And then things kind of took a massive turn for the worse. And we believe that Ian had a brain bleed, which is eventually what took his life. And we had to say goodbye.
Wow. You want to talk about 2 heavy-set fellas sitting in a closet and getting a little emotional. Wow. That, I'm glad that you shared that, man. I was married previously, and I went through the process of IVF and losing that a couple of times, and that's difficult in and of itself, let alone being able to see, touch, feel, love another human being, and then have to say goodbye like that. So thanks for sharing that. So on a lighter note, y'all have really done an amazing job at keeping Ian's legacy alive and keeping his name relevant and in front of people. Tell me about all the different activities that y'all do to honor him and remember him.
Sure. So this November, Ian would have been 16. And through those years, we have done a lot of work through the March of Dimes, the Eastern Iowa chapter is where we kind of call home for March of Dimes. And this year was a very different year for the March for Babies since it was all online, but we still raised a fair amount of money. And
be honest, did you actually do the walk?
We did a walk, just McKenna, Suzanne, and I. And
not just to the fridge.
Not just to the fridge. We went on like a 4-mile walk that day.
That's awesome.
And as of this year, we were somewhere around like $110,000 that we've raised from our team to be given to the March of Dimes.
Wow. Just you and Suze and McKenna.
And like the teammates that we've gathered, family, friends, relatives that have come along for the journey with us. We always have a good-sized group of people. And this would have been our 15th year this last year.
That amount of money is significant.
It is. Something that we're very proud of.
And you guys were not the poster child, but y'all were the
ambassador.
Ambassador. Was it for the state or for your...
For the local.
For the local, okay. Yeah.
So we got to do a lot of different things. You're
on TV, I remember
We were on TV, we were on the radio,
I don't know, I mean, I can understand why people would put you on the radio, but TV?
I know. I'm not sure I have the voice for radio or a podcast, but definitely not the looks for TV. So,
and y'all are working on doing other things. You've told us about perhaps doing a grieving room. Is that what you called it?
Yes. So it's something that Suzanne and I kind of dreamed up, more so her.
Why?
To have something that families like us can go in and grieve and do their thing and not be in the mix with the rest of the families, so to speak, that are having successful births. And this probably sounds a little bit weird, but that, when we lost Ian, we heard, different families excited for the birth of in which they should be. But when you're in the process of making arrangements for your child, it's really hard to hear that.
Yeah, but I can't even imagine. The loss of a child, I just can't fathom it, because I sat when our first foster placement, and I'm sure you remember that, when we lost our first foster placement, I felt like I lost a piece of me.
Yeah.
And she had only been with us for, I think it was right at 6 months. It was on my birthday, and I cried and cried and cried.
I cried with you.
Yeah, it was rotten. So I can't imagine that. So
something that no parent should really ever have to do.
Yeah. So tell people how we met.
Let's we'll hit the way back button, because it's been a few years now. But we
doesn't seem like it, man.
We have a mutual passion of motorcycles, and we went on. Well, rewind a little bit. Joel's Uncle Mark, who's a heck of a good dude, and he introduced me to this group of guys that they always went on the big summer Harley trip. And from, we would start out in the Midwest and kind of throw some darts at a map and throw some ideas around and where people wanted to go or where they haven't been. And that year that I went along for the first time, and my buddy Brent, and we went down through Tennessee and into North Carolina, rode the tail of the dragon.
And 6 years ago.
Wow, 6 years. Yep. And so one of the days, Joel and I got separated from the rest of the group because we were the youngins, and we were riding a little bit harder than the rest.
I think that solidified our friendship.
And yeah, for sure. We were riding through the hills of North Carolina, lost, and dragging our floorboards and just having a hell of a good time. I looked over at him as we were coming into this town to make a phone call to see where the other guys were. And we both had these big old grins on our face, and that was enough.
We sat in that Walgreens parking lot for a long time.
For a couple of hot minutes.
Yeah. And then we had some barbecue, and I don't remember. I think we were on the edge of Asheville, or somewhere out there. It was interesting. That was an interesting trip. Yeah. That trip was when my house flooded.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Sure do.
My house in Minnesota flooded, and that was a mess.
I mean, let's be honest. There was a couple of comedies of errors on that whole trip where your beloved dog Bristol got lost one day, I think we were on the outskirts of St. Louis and trying to figure out just how exactly we could get you up to Minneapolis to find this dog in less than the 9 hours it would take to drive it.
I don't even remember how she got found, but, well, I'm actually looking at old pictures from that trip. That was one for the book. So, one thing that we live in a big town, Nashville, and, we feel like we sit in traffic all day, and, Cedar Rapids isn't a metropolis by any means, but when you were working from an office, you were working like 13, 14 miles away in Iowa City. And
30.
30 miles?
Yeah, 30 miles.
I didn't realize it was that far. Was it an hour to work?
It's right around 35 to 40 minutes.
Okay. So
depending on traffic.
Yeah, I mean, that's about what we commute, 14, 15 miles here to downtown. So that being said, as a dad, and you've been pretty dang active in McKenna's extracurriculars, how did you manage your time so that you didn't miss anything or don't miss anything, any of her activities?
So there's a couple of factors in that. One, I always wanted to be the dad that was at everything I possibly could be for McKenna. I love my dad wholeheartedly, but that was not the dad that he was. He was there for me in a lot of other ways, but he didn't do the activities that we were a part of. And I think every generation wants to change a little bit about the previous, and that was the one that hit home with me, that I wanted to be there for everything. I had no idea what it was going to be like being a girl's dad. I'd never done that before. And so I help coach McKenna's basketball team. And so a couple of factors with that is I have a job that allows very, very well, or allows us to have a work-life balance. If I need to go home for something, I can do it. And if it's something that's pressing, I can log on later and get it done. That helped, and the drive to always be there for her when I could.
That's rad. Yeah, my dad was amazing. I don't think he ever missed a choir, a football game, a track meet. I don't think he ever missed anything. And that always impressed me because he was one of two dentists in the whole county, if I remember correctly. So he worked a lot, but always managed to get there and to be supportive. I don't know how he did it. To this day, I don't know how he did it. And, he was always doing something in the yard on Saturday, or a honey do this or what have you for mom. And I try to just get myself through a day, through a week now. And it's like, how do I do this? I don't know how I'm going to get to Brooks and get to his stuff and coach his stuff and so on and so forth. And I'll tell you, when I think I was a senior in college, when my dad said, "Hey, I hope you're sitting down, but I'm going back to active duty in the Air Force." And I believe he was 55 when that happened.
I don't think I've ever known that.
And my parents' hometown was 7 hours away from where I played college football. And my dad was 3 hours beyond that.
Wow.
And my dad missed his first ever game. And he wasn't on a deployment, but I think he had to go to Germany for something for the military. But I think he only missed one home game when I was in college. And I don't believe he ever missed any sort of activity, home or away, that I can remember. I'm sure basketball wasn't really my big deal. He probably missed a game or two for that, but
I'd probably just say for the dads out there, the young dads especially, even the older dads, make it a priority. Just like you make your significant other a priority, make your kids' life and make them want to be around you and to be positive around them and to, give them something to roll after. You look up to your dad still.
Yeah, for sure.
And as do I to mine. And It's setting that base and that foundation for your kids to know that they're important.
Yeah. If you could, I can't say that you have all the infinite wisdom. You got a lot more than I got. I mean, you've had almost 15 years of dad experience. What would be the biggest piece of advice you would give me?
Patience, my grasshopper. No, it really is that we talked about it a little bit that, there's going to be days that you're going to want to just drown your head in the pillow.
Or in Quality House.
Yeah. And there's going to be days where you don't want the sun to go down because it was the best day ever.
Yeah.
Treasure those days and patiently move past the others.
And that's not one of my strong suits is patience. And I've talked about that before. It's difficult for me starting to be a father at such an old age. I have friends who have children in college now, as do you. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't easy, and patience, hasn't been something that was quick to come to me to start with. But man, I really try to take these little things and make them memorable. For one thing, just for an example, I try to slow things down, and I get up at typically between 4:15 and 4:30 in the morning, and I go run and I go lift, and Brooks usually doesn't get up until about 6:30. A lot of times Ari's looking at me when I walk in the front door because her room's right by the front door, so she's looking at me. So we start to hang out then, but she just kind of lays there and does her thing, and I get them their stuff ready for the day, and then by that time, Mr. Tato's is typically starting to do some babbling at about 6:30, and one of my favorite parts of the day, we call it Brooksy Cuddle Time, and he gets to have his morning milk while we kind of snuggle on the chair. That to me is one of my absolute favorite parts of the day, and it's taken me a long time to appreciate those moments, but I think as my anxiety level goes down with them not screaming 100% of the time, it helps me appreciate those little moments more and more. So,
and those are things you'll remember forever. I mean, I think about stuff all the time, and it kind of twists my heart a little bit. But what am I going to say at McKenna's wedding? And there's so many funny things.
Do you really think about that already?
I've been thinking about it for a long time because, as you all know now, I'm a pretty emotional dude. And
Billy Bob cried.
Yeah.
Because he's a bit of a crier.
And I'm going to be a hot mess that day, that whole day. It's going to be rough on big old dad. But I know that she'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the type of stuff that you'll think of, down the road. Like, hey, buddy, why don't we get a glass of milk and just chill out on the couch and watch something beside PJ Masks, but let's watch some TV together. Let's watch some football.
Yeah, for sure. He was my college football coach is now the head football coach at Arkansas. And the last several weeks when the Razorbacks have been on, Brooks and I have, and I've been home from work anyway, Brooks and I have tried to sit down and watch. So I hope that he develops that love of sports and of football. And frankly, Alex has asked me a number of different times, like, what are you going to do if he doesn't want to play football? I don't care. As long as he's happy. I was in the choir. I also played Division I football. But, you do whatever you want to do. Yeah. If he wants to be in drama or whatever, I don't care. My dad gave me some pretty good advice many times, obviously, but I remember one thing that he told me, and it always sticks out to me, and it's one of the reasons that I live in Nashville today. I was working in a job that I absolutely hated. I shook like a leaf going into work every day because I hated it so bad. And I knew I had to make a change. And when I was going through that situation, I remember sitting in a restaurant in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, at a place called Tavern 4 and 5. Dad and I were sitting there having dinner and getting the advice that Dad dad advice that you always want or sometimes just desperately need.
Mm-hmm.
And he looked at me and he said, Pete, I don't give a shit if you're a garbage man. He goes, but as long as you are a garbage man, be the best damn garbage man that you can be. If you want to go sell motorcycles, go sell motorcycles. Sell more motorcycles than the next guy. That was a big takeaway from me. And I don't care if I don't care if Brooks grows up to be a mechanic or a plumber or a brain surgeon. You know, if it's what he wants to do, then by all means, just be the best you can be.
For sure. And I think that's really important advice that your dad gave you. And because, I mean, to be honest, that most of those jobs like you were describing, they would have your job posted before your obituary was in the newspaper.
For sure. I was worried about, because my dad was a dentist, or my brother's a pharmacist, and my sister's a pharmacist. She's got her doctorate in pharmacy. And here's little old me that got a degree in criminology and had kind of wanted to be a cop. And here he is, after managing banks, just wants to go and be sales manager at a motorcycle shop. And I always worried that I would be letting them down or that I wasn't as good, you know, because I was often compared to my brothers and sisters, you know, growing up. And my brother and sister, I should say. But, you know, it's, I guess, just be you and do what makes you happy, I guess, is what I'll tell Brooks and Ari, if she's still with us, which I hope. Yeah.
That's a pretty key for raising a child, that you're going to love them no matter what. And they might test you a bit. They're testing you now, but you'll be fine. And they're going to grow up to do things, and what they need most from you is your support.
Yeah.
They need support from their parent that they look up to and that just loves them no matter what. That's what they need. They don't need all of the fancy toys and this and that. They need somebody that loves them.
And I think that's one of the things that they stress in, like, foster care, for example. And it's just, these kids don't necessarily need the hottest toys. They don't need the new Jordans. I'm aging myself there, because that's what we always wanted, was new Jordans. But they don't need
Kyrie Irving.
Who?
Kyrie Irving? Like, he has his own, like, Nike line.
Nike.
Yeah, that you can, it's actually pretty slick, that you can get on and design them yourself.
Oh, boy.
You can make them whatever color you want and make the soles however you want them to be. They're pretty cool.
Okay. But yeah, you don't need the latest and greatest stuff. You know, what you need is structure and, you know, somebody that believes in you and somebody that loves you. So,
I mean, that being said, we're in this room for a couple of purposes, but one is to keep quiet for the sleeping children that you have developed a structure and a routine for, that had you not taken on the challenge and accepted them as your own, who knows what structure and love that they would have right now. So,
good point.
Kudos to both of you for that part of it, that it's extremely important to these two little ones that are freaking adorable, by the way. And I've had so much fun with that, throwing them around and giggling and all that good stuff.
You know, but it's weird. The last several nights, I'm the only one that's woken up in the middle of the night with them and got them quiet and whatnot. I'm kidding.
I've been asleep.
And cooking.
Yeah.
We've ate a lot. I think we said that already, but what else do you want to talk about, dude?
I think that we could talk a little bit about that we went on a cool ride yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
On a couple of Indian motorcycles, which, if you want a Indian versus Harley review, I can give you the skinny on some of that, because I do ride a Harley, but it's always fun to throw a leg over another bike, especially one that I didn't have to pay for.
Yeah.
But we rode to the infamous Natchez Trace Bridge.
Yeah.
And took a killer photo from underneath that, we rode over it and kind of rode under it. And
once saw some ginormous houses along the way.
What did you call it, that display of wealth?
Vulgar display of wealth. I stole that from Cam.
So, I mean, neither one of us have houses to complain about. No. But I'm certain that one of these houses yesterday, that the doors and windows in this house alone, just the doors and windows, were worth more than my entire property. I mean, there had to have been 100 gigantic windows on that house. I mean, it's just huge.
I don't know how many square feet that house is going to be, but it's just insane.
Somewhere to the tune of 10 to 15,000 square foot, I would have to believe.
Yeah.
And I'm certain that there's probably an indoor pool and an outdoor pool, but man, it's ridiculous. And sometimes you look around and think that you're doing this whole life thing pretty darn well, and you see that and like, I'm nothing compared.
Yeah, but you know what, dude? You don't know what's going on there.
For sure.
I know of a person here in town that had a $4 million mansion, and his first or second ex-wife got that in the divorce. Mm-hmm. And just to make her upset, he built a bigger one literally across the street.
Wow. Yeah, that would be tough. But
and you never know what's going on in that person's mind, because that person I know was a lot less happy than what you and I are.
For sure. And that's, side note, that having a gigantic house does not mean that you're happy. I'm pretty darn happy, and I've got a decent house. You're pretty darn happy and have a decent house, but it's fun to dream.
Yeah,
and to look at those. But at the same time, I think it would be so lonely living in that gigantic house.
But you could have a giant bed. We have a California king-size bed, and with these stupid dogs, it almost feels like a twin.
Yeah.
So Alex would like 2 California kings put together. That would be her ideal size of a bed, I think.
Interesting topic, because another little side note about me is I helped teach a class called Daddy Boot Camp in Cedar Rapids, and it was for new dads. We didn't have dolls. We had real life babies, and the dads would come in with their babies and basically hand them off to a new dad-to-be and be like, this baby is yours for this next 3 hours. Like, bottles, diapers, the whole 9 yards. Like, I'll coach you through it, but you're going to get a crash course.
And, a crap course?
Yeah, a crap course. That happened a lot in that class. But it was a lot of fun to do that class.
That's interesting. Maybe one day I can do that.
Yeah. Especially with the age that Ari's at right now, that'd be pretty fun, especially since she's pretty darn happy now, too. But do you and Alex ever, kind of taking over the host role for a second, but do you guys ever allow the children to sleep in bed with you?
No.
That's a good answer. They
never once have.
Right. Suzanne and I were always very adamant that McKenna not sleep in bed with us. Because 1, I'm not a little fella. And 2, I'm a very heavy sleeper, so my biggest fear was always rolling over on her and something awful would happen. And so I was like, nope, we can't have her sleeping in our bed because who knows what's going to happen. So that would be a little piece of advice, that it's a very hard habit to break if you have a child co-sleeping with you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be that guy that tells you that you shouldn't do it. It just wasn't for me.
There won't be any co-sleeping. If he comes or she comes in the middle of the night, or, like scared of a ghost, or wakes up early in the morning, 6 o'clock, and wants to go, come hang out with mom and dad in bed, I'm not opposed to that. But the every night sleeping in the same bed, not going to happen.
I couldn't do it, man.
Big sister Maisie's not going to have that either.
Yeah. Because whereas Suzanne and I do not have a California king, we have a, let's just call it a Rhode Island queen.
What?
Because it seems small for a queen. But, yeah, there was just flat out, I didn't want anybody else in that bed because it's just close quarters, and I didn't really want that.
I hear you.
So that was our stance on that.
Dude, I got nothing else. You?
this will be a two-part question. What are your biggest fears as a dad?
Ooh. Good question. I think the biggest fear is that I won't live up to what my dad was. I won't do everything that my dad was able to do. I won't have the patience that my dad had. I won't have the knowledge that he had. I think that I won't live up to what the kids need.
It's fair, which I think that, from 1,000-foot level, that I think that you're already doing a fine job. And not just saying that because I'm your friend. I've watched you for the last how many days, and hell, we talk every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you're there. So just keep the patience, keep the anxiety down.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother Dad-isode. But and then what are you feeling as some of your greatest accomplishments so far as a dad?
I've kept 2 little people alive for 16 months now.
They're fed, they're growing, they're well cared for, they're loved.
Yeah, I think just loving on them and knowing the situations that they came from, and I'm proud that they have a life that they would never even come close to having.
For sure.
If they were in the situation that they were in. And you never know. Maybe Ari won't be with us forever, but,
She had a darn good start.
Yeah, she did. And, when a kid's born with drugs in their bodies, and, that's a heck of a way to start life. And going from there, you don't know where it's going to go, where it's going to lead. But I feel like we've put them in the right situations to get the help that they need, if they need it, and just giving them the love and support, and surrounded them with people that will love and support them forever, regardless of if we gave birth to them or they were adopted or fostered or whatever. And both of our families have done, and friends for that matter, have done an amazing job of accepting.
Yeah. And I think that, I think for the foster community out there that you guys are part of, and frankly what this podcast is about, hats off to you all, because that's a gigantic thing that you all are taking on. And I really, honestly, Joel, couldn't be more proud of you and Alex for what you're doing for these kids and for that whole community in general. So hats off to you, pal.
Thanks, buddy. Well, it's been fun. Most of you are never going to know that we had to restart this 3 times?
I think 3 times, yeah.
We had recorded a few minutes here and there, and we've ultimately got 43 consecutive minutes, which is rad.
At least we think we do.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll wait for the boss to come in.
Yeah. But thanks for tuning in, and Dale, thanks for sitting down and being part of this and sharing part of your story and giving some insight and some wisdom and what have you. And I'm not going to lie, I don't think I really want to sit in a closet with you again anytime soon.
Yeah, no, that's
it's kind of warm in here.
It is a little warm. But one last thing is that if there's anybody out there in the foster community or that listens to the podcast that has gone through loss or is having a trouble with that, if you private message Alex, because she'll be the one to get the message. If you do that and want to reach out to my wife and I for anything, they can put you in touch with us.
That's awesome, dude. I wouldn't have thought of that, and I wouldn't have thought to ask you to put yourself out there like that, so that's really cool.
So that being said, if with prematurity, with loss, anything along those lines, I'd be happy to talk more with some of you out there that will listen to this. And thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
And I would like to say, for the record, I think there was only 1 swear word. I think you said Dave. That's 2.
I probably cussed less with you in here than I have with Alex.
Yeah, so
my dad skills are getting better.
She was all worried that we'd cuss her off of her platform, and we didn't. So appreciate you, man.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good day.